This is the Better Together podcast. I'm Micah.
And I'm Rochelle.
Here we go.
Sorry, Micah just gave me the weirdest cue ever. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 22.
I used my big toe.
It was like the most emphatic go that I've ever seen.
Well,
hello.
it's great to see you. We realized last episode that I always end our podcast by saying we'll see you next week, and we don't see you.
Right.
We want to see you, but we don't.
Oh, I'm telling you what, guys. Here we go. All right. So today we are going to be talking about family finances.
That is so true. And we used F's, family finances. So we need to have every point start with F, which we haven't tried. So we're going to have to figure this out.
Yeah.
Okay,
we're not going to do that.
They just turned it off.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Or maybe this one will get shared more than any other.
No, it won't. I'm sure. Okay, everybody. So we're talking about finances today. Emphasis on family because if you're single, you don't have to make decisions with other people.
Right.
So just be happy, okay? No, this is about making a plan. But before we do, we've got a couple of things, or at least one thing I want to talk about. I have a new book coming out that you may be interested in. I'm not sure on the release date, but I can tell you that it will be in September of 2017. And it's called...
Which this episode is taking place in.
Good point. And but it's called Start to Finish Self-Publishing. So if you have ever... I always say, if you have a book in you, this is how to get it out. It's kind of a step-by-step process of how to go from concept to getting your book on Amazon, all the way to writing a series of books. So it's all of the things that I've learned over the last 2.5 years of publishing, and this is my 8th or 9th book, one of those. And so I've done it several times, and I've read and listened to so many different things about the best and worst practices. And so the best practices are in this book, and then the worst practices are not even mentioned. Okay, so start to finish self-publishing. You can find it on our website or at Micah and that is our website.
Yeah, that is our website.
Amazon.com. So it's great. It's really great for business leaders, for moms that have wonderful ideas that need to be in the marketplace. It's for pastors who you preach a sermon every Sunday, and that's more than a chapter of a book.
Yes.
So everybody's got a book in them somewhere, most likely, and this is the way to do that. So back to episode 22.
Yes. So we're going to be talking about finances today, and most importantly, making a plan.
Yeah, because that's how you find success.
Yes. So what Micah said here is that building your nest egg doesn't happen organically. You actually have to make a plan to make your goals happen.
Which I don't remember writing that. I think you wrote that.
Did I?
It's very good. I can tell. It's one of yours.
Hey, look at me.
So building a nest egg doesn't really happen organically. That you really have to plan to make your goals happen. So we're going to go through back and forth on different things, but really it's us discussing the same things from different vantage points, and I love that.
So Micah and I didn't grow up with the same examples around money. It's not like dramatically different.
No, you didn't grow up in the heart of Africa where you were on a dirt floor.
No, definitely. No, definitely not. But we definitely grew up differently. And so, I said here, namely, Micah's family had money and mine didn't. Not that we didn't have any money. We didn't have a lot to spare. So, but Micah's family did grow up with not just that his family had money, but that his parents really taught them how to handle their money. and what to do with it, how to invest it, and things like that. And I was taught just a lot more basic concepts around finances. I got my first job when I was 15, and the rule in our house was that my parents provided us with everything. Well, me. So it's just me.
You, yourself, and I.
Yes. So they provided me with everything that I needed, so I didn't need to have an entire paycheck. So the rule was that I had to put half of every paycheck into, after my tithe. So the first 10% went to my tithe, and then half of the 90% that was left went into a savings account. And I emptied that stinking savings account to pay for one semester of college.
Oh, man. I was hoping you would say a boat that
Yeah,
I didn't
right.
know about.
Yeah. I have a boat somewhere that in 8 years I haven't thought
Right.
to share with you.
We've found out a lot of things about each other on this podcast. And for goodness sake, it needs to be in my favor for once.
So anyway, we had a lot of very similar examples around money, that saving was important. And, my mom and I were on a first name basis with the investor that she used and things like that. But kind of different playing out of how it happened, I guess.
Yeah. So we're going to go through kind of a couple of principles or just some techniques that we use, scattering in or a smattering of our own examples and things where we failed, where we've succeeded. So just know that, again, we just don't love a series podcast where it's like this point led to this point that led to this point. That's not how our brains work.
Yeah, we're a lot more
right. Scattershot is how I like to say it. So, but I love point number one for if you are a spender, which typically one of the marriage unit is a spender and one's a saver.
And let me throw something in here really quickly.
Here we go.
That can volley.
It does not.
It does. It absolutely does. So sometimes, as a general rule in our marriage, Micah is the saver and I'm the spender.
I don't think that Rochelle's ever gotten louder about something.
I didn't think I got loud there.
Definitely.
So as a general rule, he's the saver and I'm the spender. But when Micah goes on a spending spree,
that's right.
he goes on a
I
spending
get 2
spree.
Kindle books.
No, he gets a guitar.
That's correct. So, but that, again, we're not sharing everything on this show. We're trying to make me look good here. Okay? Not you bad, though. Okay. So, I love this. I love this idea that if you are a spender and it's gotten out of control or it's out of your budget, which is a really good point to make. Use the 24-hour rule for your purchases. So, for instance, I really I use sometimes I'll use like a 3-month rule, but
most of the time,
right?
Like, can I get this package of pencils?
Stop it.
I'm gonna wait 3 months.
But I've always wanted one of those Kindles where you can be out in the direct sunlight or in a dark room and it looks great. So but for instance, if I wanted that Kindle, but it was all of my budget or it was outside of my budget, but we really needed it. Maybe we would take 24 hours to confirm that it wasn't just an emotional pull as much as it is what we really did need.
Yes.
And I loved, Rochelle's mom had a rule called the "Do you love it" rule. So if, and I'm telling her own story here, but if she goes around I'm thinking like a Kohl's or a, what do you call it, a department store with clothing, a clothing store. And, and she finds, that perfect blouse, but, she's like, just not sure, or it's right outside of the budget. She'll walk it around the store, as she's looking for other things.
It's not like on a leash.
Right. It's so weird. There's a little duck on the end of it. So, but the idea being, if you don't come back to it, or if you, if you look at it later and go, you know what, I just don't love it, then let it go, because
Yeah.
you're ruining your budget that way.
Yeah, if I can talk myself out of it by the time I've made a pass around the store, then I was going to get home and regret buying it. And my mom's whole point was that she would rather have a closet with a fewer amount of things. She would rather have basically quality over quantity, fewer options, but all options that she absolutely loved. And so that's what she kind of taught me to do too. And that's what I do today.
I love that. So do you love it rule? Mm-hmm. Use it.
Yes, please use that. So another point is find what works for your family. There are a lot of like hard and fast rules out there for budgeting. And one of the things that Micah and I found was that not all of those rules gave us success. For example, for us, we love the whole envelope budgeting option, but we weren't having a ton of success using cash because just various reasons. It just was harder to keep track of.
Well, yeah. And if she had the money, then I didn't know what we had and all of that. And if you're lazy like I was, you have to go to the bank and get cash.
Yes.
So
and
it wasn't
things,
working.
Like for me, I'm a spender and I am far more likely to spend cash that I have than to spend, using a card. It's just for some reason.
Which is way different than I think most people.
Yeah. Cash, I guess it reminds me of being a kid. And when I would get birthday money, I would blow it right away because like I said, we grew up a little bit differently. And my mom didn't buy me stuff outside of birthdays and Christmas. Like she blew birthday and Christmas out of the water. But we didn't do a lot of spending other times of the year. So she didn't. But I did. So I would spend that right away. So having cash, like I would blow through our grocery budget really fast because it was like, well, look at all this cash in here. It looked like a lot more than it was. So we eliminated that. We use electronic envelopes. So we have an app on our phones that's connected. I don't think we've talked about this before, but so that we both know how much money is in it at all times. And so we can, for us, it simplifies things. But there are tons of options out there for budgeting. And so if you are looking to get into, you've never really made a family budget before, or you're confused about how to do it, please hear us. There are a lot of options. It can be almost overwhelming.
There really is. And as, we're going to talk about a budget in a little bit, but the one thing that has to happen before you begin that process of making it is you have to be willing to talk about it. I've heard it said that money is one of the most, if not the most, divisive things in a marriage. And it's the same way that I joked at the front of the podcast that if you're single listening to this, thank God you are listening to this, but you don't have to share your finances with anybody else. And that's an awesome thing to have. But once you marry into a relationship with your beautiful bride, in my case, that comes with the territory. Mm-hmm. But one thing that can happen is that you don't break that old chain of feeling like my money is my money is my money. Well, that's the quickest way to a problem.
Yes.
And so you've got to be willing to talk about it. And I think it's really important that one member of your relationship, so the husband take it or the wife take it, depending on gifting, but one member be the facilitator, the one that understands money or numbers better, maybe is the perfect person. Mm-hmm. But then the other one has to be willing to come and listen. That was something that we struggled with early on making a budget, because I'm very willing to make the budget. I claimed that duty right away, but I was using it as inappropriately to say this is what we have to do, to the point where any time that we would have to talk about the budget, it was not a fun moment.
Yeah. And I was unwilling to talk about it because it stressed me out.
Yeah, and that's not smart.
No.
That's not
No.
not the best way to have a relationship. So, and then the other side of it is, if one of you is more of a perfectionist about these things, you have to be willing to take suggestions. And then the other side, if you're a little more hesitant, you have to be willing to make suggestions out loud. Both of you talk.
Yes.
If you won't do that, you'll never be able to have success with your finances. It's just, there's too much of us and them going on instead of we.
Yes, absolutely. So once you've talked about it and listened, honestly listened to one another and everything, then you have to make your budget. You actually have to build it out. Where are you going to spend money, and how much are you going to spend?
And that can be through an Excel document, like a Microsoft Excel document, or it can be as simple as a piece of paper.
Yes.
And just writing it out. But you have to know, and you have to be willing to go through that process.
Yes, and that means that you have to know approximately what you already spend in those places.
Which may be eye-opening.
It probably is very eye-opening. But once you make the budget...
$60 at Dairy Queen. What?
That's so, side note here. When Micah and I first made our budget, when we looked at the amount of money that we spent eating out in that first few months of marriage, it was honestly shameful.
Yeah,
like,
we would have done better with like a Disney plan at the park.
Right. We really would have. We were eating out. So I remember being like, we don't eat out that much. And then we did the budget and it was like almost half.
Do you want to eat out tonight?
We should.
This is where we get into trouble.
Yes. Okay. So, let's get a babysitter. It's the first, we're in a new month, guys.
Right. Let's blow it.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. Once you've made your budget, once you've sat down, you've talked it out, you've allotted the money into the different categories. So you have a grocery budget, you have, a clothing budget maybe for each of you, or like we have budgets for car maintenance, for Christmas. We save all year for Christmas, and things like that. Okay. So here's the hard part. Are you ready? You stick to it.
Yeah. And it's really tough to do that initially.
And ongoing, truthfully.
Well, my point was going to be that if you create a budget and it doesn't work, then make it a fluid thing where you can take from this to put to that, or
Yes.
Figure out where things need to be. Because initially you may make some mistakes. Now you might think, well, we can't just get more money, but one, you probably will down the road. But beyond that, perhaps you've for me, my clothing budget doesn't need to be near as high as the kids or Rochelle. I other than what I get at Christmas and maybe some extra underwear, I'm always I just don't like going shopping for clothes.
Yes.
So, but if we apportioned that exactly the same, it really doesn't make sense. But you might do that initially. And so you can reallocate. So it really needs to be a living document and not just, just a dead staring at you,
Yes.
a mean guy.
And here's the thing. You have to make sure when you budget, regardless of how tight your budget is, please set aside even a small amount. It doesn't have to be huge, but set aside something for fun. And I say that because if you set aside, even if it's $10 a month for something fun, to be able to have lunch with a friend, to be able to go out on a date, whatever it is, even if it's a really small amount, you are less likely to blow your budget if you already have fun budgeted in. So make sure you set aside something. Guys, seriously, it can be small. Ice cream. Set aside something to get ice cream and rent a movie, if that's as little as your budget will allow. But set aside something, because if you don't do that, you'll end up a month or two in, you're going to hate your budget so much that you're going to just go out and blow it.
And the other side of it is, you need to, we've learned this the hard way, but you have to address the hard things like the debts. You know, we would have rather just continued to pay the minimum on Rochelle's school loans forever and never address it. But the truth of it is that was hurting our future financial position.
Yes.
Because of just kind of seeing it or putting it off or whatever. And
you just pay more.
And it's not easy. I would rather buy guitars with my money than diapers. But it's reality.
It's true.
And it also, and this is an extra point in here, but it's good to teach your kids about the value of a budget and money. And you certainly don't need to open up the Excel spreadsheet to them and go, here it is. And, watch them be real excited about it. But you should show them the value of, one of the things that Rochelle said at the beginning was that my dad, it was my dad mainly who taught me about investing and the power of living with less. And, and my dad is very well off, but he has done a very good job of not blowing it on stuff, and that's the way that people with money keep money. Like there's so many folks who have won the lottery who have nothing now, and that's there's discipline in it.
Right.
And here's the spiritual moment. If you're struggling right now to build that, to build up the number that you want, trust God to bring the increase, but don't buy on credit. That really, it says that the borrower is servant to the lender in the Bible. Mm-hmm. In other words, you will literally end up in debtor's prison if you don't trust the Lord instead of purchasing on credit. And granted, there are, if you've got a ton of credit or you've got a ton of debt, you can definitely do the Dave Ramsey, get out of debt. But work small and steady towards getting out of it, because it's a trap.
Yes.
But trust that God will supply the increase, and then spend out of what you have and not what somebody else is willing to let you borrow.
So true. And just learn to live without until you can afford it. There are a lot of things that we don't need to have. I remember when Micah and I were getting married, we were engaged, and we were kind of setting the course. We were starting to talk about budgets, and we hadn't made a budget together or anything like that, but just talking about the way that we wanted to live as a married couple. And I remember sitting with my mom and my stepdad and saying that our goal was that eventually we would be completely debt-free, but that really, as a married couple, we wanted to live with no debt except for a mortgage. A mortgage was okay for us, but that eventually we wanted to even pay that off and live debt-free. And my stepdad laughed at us and said, "That's impossible." And we were kind of blown away by that. And what do you mean? And he said, well, everybody has stuff on credit. It's just, you're going to have to buy stuff. And we laughed and said, no, we can wait. We can save for things that we want to do. And that's how we've lived our marriage. I mean, we carried through our marriage, we have only carried a mortgage and some student loans our entire marriage. We've never had a car payment. We've saved for those things. Now, that is not necessarily through our own doing. We have been blessed considerably by family and have been able to purchase things that way. But in the midst of, why are you laughing?
I love it.
So in the midst of all of that, the whole point that I want to make is that, we haven't gone out and Micah's gotten a few guitars since we've been married. And I mean a few. I don't mean like, oh yeah, he got a guitar once. I mean, like a man's bought a couple of guitars and been gifted a couple of guitars.
Which brings us to our perfect moment in the show. If you have a very nice guitar that you want a gift, we receive them.
Yes. We is maybe being a little generous.
We do.
Anyway, learn to live without something until you can afford it. And along those lines, practice minimalism. I think so much of we live in a really consumer-driven culture that says that if I'm bored with the clothes in my closet, I should just go buy new clothes. And that's not the case around the world, guys. We don't need to live like that. I don't need to have a new outfit every so often. I recently have been like on this, like, man, I really want to go shopping because I'm a girl and I like to shop, but I don't need to go shopping. So I've been setting that aside. But one of the things that I was thinking about as we were planning this episode is that for us, maybe it's a little bit more a smaller scale than that for you. Maybe it's something more practical. Micah and I have spent the better part of this year just trying to realign our diets and lose a little bit of weight, and for a little bit for him, a lot for me, and just be healthier in general, teaching our kids that they don't actually need to have a peanut butter sandwich every day and things like that. And so, but it's really hard in this season of our lives to eat the way that like Pinterest tells me that I should in order to lose weight.
Same.
Yeah, right. That every, health blogger says, you need to consume 14 buckets of vegetables a day. And okay, I don't know about you guys, but we can't afford that. We can't afford to eat in that way in this season. But what I can do is eat less. I don't need to have a snack a couple of times a day. I don't need to, I can eat pasta and lose weight. I just don't need to eat half the pot of pasta. I can start with the vegetable and then have the spaghetti so that I'm a little bit more full. So both things can happen. I can still lose weight. I'm probably like Micah, mentioned in the last episode, or I don't remember. It might have been the beginning of this one. Anyway, he was talking about losing weight, that it's a slow and steady thing. I don't need to lose 30 pounds in 2 months. I need to take the time and just live a healthy life. And if I am on a budget, I can do that. I can lose weight and be on a budget. So learn how to do things practically.
That's so important. Because really, life is about being practical. And then, so the truth of it is, God is the one who provides your money. Mm-hmm. He provides for every bit of what you do. I heard it said that everybody works for themselves. Even if you work for someone, you still work for yourself because, one, you could quit your job. Two, you could be laid off and have a whole different problem. But the truth of it is that God is the one that is bringing in the increase. He is teaching you about money. So yeah, we all work for ourselves in the way that we get kind of a hourly wage or salary rate wage, but God could change that in a moment. And it could be for the better, or it could be for something else. But I really love the idea that what God is doing for you and for me is to say that He will give you and I enough for today and some still left over to give to others.
Yes.
That is what blessing looks like. Again, it's it's enough for you to have today and a little left over to give to others. So he may give you a storehouse of money that, that Mr. Banks from Mary Poppins is glad to see, but he's expecting you to use that for enough for today and to bless others. The idea that we're here to live with an opened palm and not a closed fist. Mm-hmm. So what that means is that I'm willing to receive the money, absolutely, but it stays there and it's also able to go out. Mm-hmm. So I don't just grab it and hold tightly to it. And I think that's what God honors.
Yes.
And it's not an easy principle to get, our pastor says he jokes and says that, you want to get all you can. What is it? You want to
Get all you can
all you get,
and
sit on the can, but that's not the God that we serve. And, one of the things that has been very humbling for me is that I naturally want to make every dollar that our family brings in. But we've learned to love that money, the money that comes from work, but also, when we get a financial increase, a blessing somehow, to say that was God too. Wherever it is. So trust that the Lord is doing that work, but be willing to give to others.
Definitely. So I'm going to take it back to a little bit of practical here for a second. Plan ahead for Christmas. Don't get to Black Friday and go on a spending spree for 3 weeks. And then look back in January and realize that you have a massive load of debt.
Yeah, the Christmas hangover.
That's crazy pants, people. It's Christmas. The reason we give gifts is to replicate the gifts that the wise men gave to Jesus. We're celebrating the birth of Jesus. We don't need massive mountains of presents to celebrate Christmas. It's not necessary. And it's something that Micah and I are learning because, the Bible says in it that God knows how to give good gifts. And I love Jesus said in it, don't you know how to give good gifts to your children? If your son asks for a fish, do you give him a snake? And basically saying, so trust God to give you good gifts. Those verses were never more clear to me than in these first 5 Christmases that we've had as parents, because I can go on a spending spree. I just want to give my kids everything that they could ever possibly want. But then I spend the other 11 months of the year shaking my fist at all of the toys in my house.
Yeah, I do it all 12 months.
Right. So we have 3 kids now. It's just too much. We can't do that. So when we just sat down this week, it's just turned September. We're recording this. It's September 1st today. And so we just sat down this week to look at our Christmas budget because I shop early. And in previous years, we have allotted less to other people outside of our house and things like that to give a nice hefty budget to our kids. This year, we decided not to do that. We actually did the same amount for every single person on our list this year as we allotted our budget. And we are doing, most of you have probably heard of this, but I'm really excited to do it with our kids this year. Our plan for our kids is to get them something they want, something they need, something they wear, and something they read. So I already have books for our 2 older ones in our Amazon cart because I know what I want to get them. And they'll work on Christmas lists to give to grandparents and things like that. And we'll pull something off of those lists for their something they want. The thing that's going to probably wait until close to Christmas for us is the something they need. Because our son is rapidly staining all of his school uniforms. So chances are really good that his something he needs is going to be a new school uniform shirt.
Of course, we don't even know what size Amazonian baby will be. So
right. Yeah. So
just might wear your clothes.
Right. 18 months old wearing mom's clothes. So we can, that limits them each to 4 gifts. That's still a lot by comparison to the rest of the world. And I just saw this on Facebook the other day. A friend of ours was mentioning that they do this with their kids. They actually budget bigger, but they do this with their kids, and they have talked to their kids about how the rest of each of their budgets goes to giving gifts to kids who don't have something. So they do an angel tree thing or an Operation Christmas Child thing. And we actually had a little bit of money left over after we allotted it. And we've already talked to our kids that we're going to put together a box. Our son's school does an Operation Christmas Child thing every year. So we're going to do one this year. Do you know how many years I've allotted significantly more to our kids and we've never done anything to help somebody else out? Like I'm so much more excited about this Christmas because of this stuff, because our pastor said once several years ago in a sermon that there's the verse that says that it's better to give than to receive. And I always just thought that was a lesson on where our hearts should be. But he redirected that and said, that's not what that's about. Not that that's not entirely what it's about, but that it's really about, isn't it so much better to be in a place where you're able to give than in a place where you need to receive?
It's such a big deal.
That's a huge thing. That's why you budget. I mean, overall, you want to be in a place where you're able to give, not in a place where you need to receive. And I'm really excited to teach that lesson to our kids this year, that there are kids around the world who get nothing for Christmas, who are lucky if they get a meal for Christmas. And that our kids this year are going to give up having mountains of presents to be able to bless other kids around the world. Because here's the honest to goodness truth. We're not going to give our kids mountains of presents, but there are some grandparents around them who are. So they're not going to go without. We're just lessening what we're doing and teaching our kids what it means to give with a generous heart.
But even if they didn't,
Oh, right. Yeah, we still wouldn't.
So the last point we'll make, and this one is a good one. So if you've stuck around, congratulations.
Yes.
But one of the things that we have done that we had to sort out was, if you get, let's say we got, somebody gave you $100 for Christmas. So should you, if you're a Bible believing Christian, you got to tithe on the money that comes in from your job. But what do you do with the money like that? And for the longest time, I held this belief that if it was a gift to me, then I shouldn't tithe on it. But the more Rochelle and I talked about it, the more we realized that maybe we shouldn't tithe on it. We're not sure. But what we kind of came to the conclusion of was that there should still be a tithe of it, but go into something that we call God's blessing fund. So 1/10 of everything that comes in that's gifted to us, if we have the opportunity to get it, from birthdays, Christmases, or whatever, goes into a God's blessing fund. Now, I will say that the money that comes in from work, we do believe is a tithe, and it belongs in our local congregation. That it's not something that's kind of that kind of a charitable contributions fund or something like
Yes.
That's where we believe the tithe belongs. But this God's blessing fund, on the other hand, is for giving when that opportunity comes. It could be as simple as giving somebody begging on the street $20. It could be as big as giving having it saved up and giving somebody $500 to help with medical expenses, and they weren't expecting it. And it's not money, it's money that comes as soon as we get it, goes right into that fund. We don't play around with the other 90% first and then go, oh, well, we've got it, we'll put it in there. So build a giving budget that is above and beyond the tithe. Because really that's what Jesus kind of commanded us to do. And that's how we do it. And maybe that'll continue to morph and shift as we go. But that's where we're at now. And we thank the Lord for it.
Yes.
So, and it's been such a blessing to be able to go, give somebody something, go, no. And we go, sorry, it's a part of God's giving fund. It's yours now. We're not going to take no for an answer,
And it keeps, for us having the budget, I would give away everything. Micah has had to stop me several times, like, they don't need that, because I would give it all away, and then have nothing to live on. And that's not wise either. So it keeps me in check. Obviously, if we empty out that budget and something shows up that we feel like we really need to invest in, then we do that. But it gives me a place to contain it a little.
So no matter whether you're married, single, just a kid. A lot of kids listen to the show, surely.
Sure.
Our
Kids beg us not to make it, so surely.
build a giving God's blessing fund into your life. It's better than any other fund you've got.
It will bless you more than it will ever bless anybody else.
Yeah. Okay, so before we end, we have a couple of resources. Do want to remind you to visit micahandrochelle.com. Please continue to share this podcast with your friends. Definitely this episode with as many friends as you can, and that one friend you just don't like. And
You forgot to say that last episode.
Well, we can always add it back in.
It's true.
Book us to speak. It can be even as small as we would love to meet you over Skype and maybe even talk to your small group or something like that if that was something that made sense for the meeting that you have.
Yes.
But we certainly can speak at bigger places as well. But find us on iTunes and give us that 5-star review. 4 stars won't do. Okay? And then I just heard a scream coming from downstairs, so we better close this up. Yeah, a couple of resources that I would say, and these neither one of them are very specific, but I really love the idea and the heart behind them. Financial Peace University that most churches do, or at least churches do. I don't know about most, but that's a Dave Ramsey program, is really good. But find a program like it if you don't like Dave Ramsey's style, which I can understand. But be prepared to trust the Lord and to build your financial budget with giving and all of these things planned into it. And then the other one is we love the electronic envelope system. If the cash system works for you, it's the exact same thing, just without the cash. But it's little envelopes or little budgets that help you to know where you're at, and you can share it across with your spouse if that is something that was really helpful for you.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a minute, pray for one another, and then we will roll on. Lord, I thank you so much that you created the hills, the cattle on 1,000 hills, and the hills too. Lord, you own it all. And while we tend to believe that either we work for someone or we work for ourselves, Lord, the truth is that we are your children living in your world that you created for us, that you can bless it all or take it away. And Lord, I pray that you would bless us, that we would do everything we know how to do to live under the commandments that you've given us about money. I thank you that you spoke about it more than just about anything else in the Bible because it matters to you, that we know how to bless those around us, to live in such a way that our palm is open and not closed. And Lord, we pray that you would meet every need, Lord, financial, certainly spiritual, Lord, and health for anyone that's listening. And we pray that you would do that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. We will see you next week.